Welcome everyone to Sustainable Minds. This is a limited podcast series that delves into the importance of intentional problem solving in addressing complex sustainability issues. This is your host, Ben Mumme, and today I am joined by Tuan Nguyen. And for those of you that don't know Tuan, he's actually been on the show before, but on the main platform, Living Your Greatness. He is a purposeful driven entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and a 3 times TEDx speaker. He founded HealthGenie, which is a multi-million-dollar firm serving private health organizations. So Tuan, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Ben. What an awesome time for us to reconnect and catch up. It's been a while. It's been a hot minute.
Totally. I can't believe it's already been 2 years. Time has flown by. We're back in like the same spots. You know, you're back at like your restaurant right there, and I'm actually back in Montreal where I'm originally from. But I want to get kicking here in terms of, you know, maybe not everyone knows who you are, Tuan. So, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you spend your formative years growing up? And, you know, what inspired you, you know, to essentially grow into, a purposeful entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I'll say is I was born in Vietnam, and I left Vietnam when I like to call it the changing of the guards. When we came to Canada, I was very ill, and the hospital and different healthcare providers saved my life, essentially. And also Canada and the community saved my family. So, those just coming to Canada, knowing this story that my life had my heart had flatlined a couple of times on the way to Canada, and the fact that my family would have been nowhere if it wasn't for the community. I think I always tell people I was born with purpose. Purpose was just injected into me. You're lucky to be alive. Your heart stopped twice. So when you hear stuff like that, you're like, all right, I better be grateful every day, because if not, then I wasted the efforts of the amazing healthcare professionals and care providers and family and love to keep me alive, right? And so that alone was the start of, I think, something I didn't know as a child, that living, I guess, with I think a lot of people live with a purpose. I have a purpose of being lazy, like that's, what I mean? It's like, but at least I think I've always had a sense of purpose to contribute to the greater good, because the greater good we were part of that at one point. So at least my sense of purpose was that growing up. And the funny things, I grew up in Montreal, so I grew up in Saint Leonard area, where and Jean Talon, Beaubien, around that area in Montreal, and it was great growing up there. I loved being in Montreal. In fact, I'd love to retire back in Montreal. My heart is still there, although I love Ottawa as well, right? But growing up in Montreal was just grow up in, like, we grew up in social housing. Your standard immigrant story. I don't have to over embellish that, but there were definitely challenges growing up as a visible minority. But the funny thing is, every time I faced a challenge, or my family faced a challenge, there was always someone who was there to help us, right? And so throughout my life, I pursued medical school. Surprise, surprise. And it wasn't because of this whole Asian, kind of stereotypical Asian thing, but it was more because I was touched by healthcare. I was touched by health providers. And so I want to be that person to sort of repay, forward, paid forward. And so in that pursuit, though, I learned so much about the world I didn't even know, and I also learned that I had a greater interest in mobilizing and connecting and learning about people. I had a curiosity about where people came from. I had a curiosity about people's stories. And when my story was being shared, I was just naturally interested in other people's stories, right? And so just sheer curiosity sort of led me to rethink what's else I can do other than being a physician, right? And when I was applying for medical school at after Cégep or during Cégep, kind of like at the 11th hour, I realized that over the last 10, 15 years, as I volunteered, gave back to the community, fundraise. Again, I'm kind of giving a quick synopsis here, just always being involved in the community. What I felt most alive was when I mobilized people and supported the whole group in a common vision of making a difference. I love doing that, inspiring and mobilizing people. And so I decided to just change and pivot at the very last minute. Went through engineering, then a business degree, and here I'm thinking, wow, I better graduate, find a job, and 20 years later, after some experience, I could start my first business. Well, who would have thunk, I'd say thunk, who would have thunk that through volunteerism, I would meet some of those incredible mentors. And it was these mentors that mentored me into, at that time, doing what I really want to do, which was doing everything I can entrepreneurially, which I didn't know was entrepreneurially, but everything I could in my free time to give back to charity and give back to people in need. And I always challenge myself to do better and better and giving more and more out of the same time. And that's when I didn't even know I came up with the idea of leverage. If I alone volunteered 10 hours a week, I could raise 1,000. What if I mobilize like 10 people and we each volunteered 5 hours? We would probably raise $10,000. We could raise more and more. And without even knowing, my mentors right in front of me, right in front of them, saw that I was developing the skills of an entrepreneur. But yet here I am thinking, I'm just volunteering. I'm just trying to give back to charity. I'm just doing my role and playing my role in the community to help back. And now fast forward to today, I'm like, almost pushing 50 years old. And I've been very fortunate to have been around when the internet first started. So I play with the internet, and I myself, as a couple of partners of mine, we ran a few internet businesses, online directories, e-commerce stores, online communities, digital assets. We also had, of course, consulting companies, and we consulted companies to grow their businesses through the internet. We have a company now that we do digital adoption. So I have my fingers in a little bit of a lot of things. And if you talk about mental models, I don't know if it's a mental model, but how I build things is I envision what success looks like, and I imagine what that team looks like. I imagine what the systems look like for it to be sustained, and I build that system, and I bring the people in early. And so people wonder, how do I accomplish, let's say, a lot at the same time, including like co-parenting 7 kids, running a restaurant with my sweetheart, all these things. Like, how do we do it? Well, I come from a pretty systems approach, but with a human, with the drivers of human, characteristics, right? And so now today I get to run several different businesses. Some of them I talk about, some of them I don't, because I purposely create these assets online that generate revenue, so I could just spend more time with my family, spend more time with self-care, and that's it. So just literally threw like a lot into a span of like 4 minutes and some, and I'll leave it to you, Ben, to kind of like dive in where you want to dive in, so it's more relevant to your purpose and your audience.
I appreciate that, Tuan. Yeah, thanks for, giving us background of, who you are, as well as, like your whole entrepreneurship journey and how that evolved, through volunteerism or even purpose and giving back, essentially giving back to others. But, doing a lot of that, entrepreneurship moves, you definitely did have a lot of decisions that you had to make, right? Which is why, you were one individual that I really wanted to bring on, in terms of talking about mental models and frameworks, and just getting your opinion on how you've applied that. So follow-up question I'm curious to ask you is, how has mental models maybe influenced your approach to problem solving?
So great question. And I want to obviously let the audience know that I'm not a very academic guy, and so I never really thought in terms of mental models, but I know I use them, because as we both know, Shane and other mutual friends, I would say something, and every now and then they said, "Oh, this is this mental model." Like, wow, this leader back in 1800 applied this mental model the exact same way you did, right? And so at the end of the day, I love mental models. It just gives me a base model to problem solve, right? At the end of the day, it gives me a base model how I want to approach. And then from that point on, either I apply different mental models, if you want to call that, or I get creative. I give myself the ability to be open and just allow almost like divine universal energy to send me the vibe so I could figure it out, the energy, the creativity, the people, right? But that's, I think, where mental models comes in. It's always great to know and develop your own models or learn about the models, because it just cuts time. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because I haven't proven that scientifically, but it feels like it cuts time so we know where to start right away. I feel like if I didn't have mental models, I would take a lot longer to figure out, the end result of what we want to do in terms of decisions and how to move forward.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Something that you did say earlier on, and I kind of want to pinpoint back, is that you've, applied a systems thinking approach before,
Hmm.
like to your
Yeah.
business. And also mixing that in with like the human side as well. So a question I have is more, could you share an example of where you created, a particular system, maybe in one of your entrepreneurship
Yeah.
pursuits,
Yes.
and kind of how you solve that complex problem?
So we now do one of our business does digital adoption, right? And there's many opportunities where we get access funds for customers to do that, and it could be a combination of government programs, and it could be a combination of investors and different financing options, and the customers themselves, of course, can finance their own digital adoption and move forward in that direction. When we sat back last year and we envisioned doing this, and we knew this was sort of a hot topic, Canada is trying to encourage small businesses to adopt more digital. And us being around for almost 30 years, we thought, no, we're well positioned to help some of these businesses, right? Um, I do have friends who do very similar services, and we've grown our businesses very differently, right? We're both, I would say, multi-million-dollar businesses. And the difference is when you track our growth, though, the growth of one of my friend's company Izzy, is it was a nice, she shot up really fast and then went down and is kind of like plateauing. Mine is like this, and now it's soaring. Like, in fact, I can't even see the end of the soaring at the moment, right? And it's because I came in and I said, okay, how can this be a business where first of all, the business itself will make a positive difference? How can it attract the best people I want to work with? And how can I retain them even? And how do I make it simple for them to succeed? How do I set them up for success? I ask all these questions in advance, right? Depending on the businesses, right? And then through these questions, two things come up. I have a business uh, strategy, right, internally, where my business has a scaling potential that others don't. And I could tell you that I'm scaling, blowing past a few of my friends and some competitors, just right beneath their eyes, right? And it's a combination of me creating the right system and bringing the right people for them to feel welcomed, accepted, heard, um, supported in their growth, right? And but at the same time, I take the time to learn everything about them, and they become part of our culture, which is the human side. They become part of the narrative of the growth of our company. I am not the founder of this company. Sure, I conceptualized the idea, but where we are today has been really a co-created company, and I believe in co-creation, right? My role might be the visionary role, but I know my colleagues, they all have extremely effective roles that are equal to myself. I think about this well in advance. Now, of course, it took me running a few businesses when I was young to learn from my mistakes and learning that, oh my gosh, I should have had this in place a long time ago. Oh, I just lost a really good employee. Why? How did I mess this one up? These are all the things I went through my entrepreneur, even myself, like in terms of even health and wellness. Wow, I've been sick for 3 weeks now. Like, what on earth? Found out, I should have taken better care of myself. I should have done this, this, and this, and this. So I learned all this. And when I built new businesses as the years come, I take all those lessons and I apply to the newest business. And the latest one is what I've just described to you at a very, very quick, again, high level, right? And so this is like how an example, what really literally the last business I launched is where we are now, right? It's taken us less than 6 months to become a multi-million-dollar business, but it looked like it was going nowhere the first 3 months, right? But guess what? My team trusted me. They saw the systems being built. They felt that they were part of building it. And when, the customers started coming in, it came in fast, right? And so, and even that I prepared for it coming in fast, meaning I don't want us all to overwork. Right. I used to have a rule and I still do. So if I work 32 hours a week, no one can work more than 32 hours a week. The whole company can never work more than the founder is at the end of the day. Right. And then if they choose to, that's great. But, my goal is to make sure my team's lives is filled up with other things that they love as well. Right. And including themselves. So I'm not sure if that answers your question fully, but that's at least my approach.
No, I love that. Appreciate you for, kind of diving in there. Something that I want to kind of move to is, we've talked about like your entrepreneurship side, which was great to hear about. We talked about one mental model, systems thinking. Are there any other mental models that you want to share that maybe you know of that you've applied?
I think there's one called Circle of Competence. I think if that's the similar one where like you are the average of the people around you and things like that, right? So I do an annual planning session every November for myself. I take a week to do it to kind of plan my best year ever for the following year. And then I host this 3 times for my friends and family. And one of them is I call it the COI, but at the end, I think it leveraged the model of the circle of competence, right? And so I always want to. So how we do our circle of competence model is when we sit together, we identify 3 to 5 areas that we value the most and that we want to make sure is heavily incorporated in our life, that we're always investing in the areas that we value. Right. And even though I wonder if that is even a mental model that is no matter what, we have to build our lives based on our values. Right. And so now I have 5 values that I want to invest more time in. I believe it's a part of who I am. And so fatherhood is one of them. Right. So we have this board where we have our 5 values and we list every single person who we think raises our game in these areas. So you don't need to say, they say, you're the average of 5 people around you. I say you're the average of the 100 people around you. You're the average of 5,000 people around you. So I don't keep it at 5. So what I have is under my fatherhood column, I think I have like 30 men who I see are incredible fathers. Then I have wealth. And so I have another 100 men and women and everyone who are in there. Right. And then I have health, wealth, fatherhood, business, and oh my gosh, it's slipping my mind. It'll come to me in a minute. Right. So I have 50 to 100 people in each of these columns. Right. And so how I leverage out my life is that I can't call these people, hang with some of these people all the time. Like some of these people run large businesses, or some of them are busy with their families. Some of them don't even live near me. Like for whatever reason, some people I could talk to every day. Some people I could talk to once every 3-6 months. And in our planning session, we put a number beside. It's 1 to 4. 1 is one you could call basically on a regular basis, and 4 you could call on a quarterly basis. So 1 is you could call once a month. And 2 is like every 2 months, 3 is every 3 months, 4 is every 4 months, right? And so we apply this, this kind of circle of competence in our lives, in my life, and that's why I encourage, is that you'll always have someone you can call upon versus just 5, right? So I think I take this circle of competence and I blow up to a whole nother level, right? So that's one. I do, now that I'm thinking about my planning, thought experiment, I think is a mental model as well. And because I remember we always talk about a thought experiment, and I love thought experiments. And just actually before, when I was saying I was with my friend, we're talking about going to the next level, right? So he goes, hey, when can we meet up and talk about going to the next level? And I said to him, bro, I love that fact that we're going to like think about talk about going next level. But I want you to tell me, what if you're already there? What does next level look like? Right. And then suddenly it's like, okay, now he's like, oh, wow, that's a good question. Now, how about this? What if we blow past next level? What does that look like? Like here you're thinking next level, like level B, capture a flag, whatever, like in a video game. But what if you blow past that next level? What does that even look like? And now people are like, oh, I really even think about blowing past my next level. What I was thinking next level is going to be. Well, let's go there now. Let's go blow past next level, and let's run with that thought experiment. And that's the same thing with me building a business. In fact, I think that's kind of thought experiment in a way when I build a business, because I imagine what it looks like to have this successful company. I imagine what the team looks like. Now that we're running it, I am coming across new things I didn't see during my thought experiment. But boy, did we get here a lot faster thanks to the thought experiment. And the more I involve groupthink into the thought experiment, the more I think we're prepared, and the better we get at predicting what's going to happen, and so yeah, so I think that's another mental model. I remember like reading about on Shane's book, the book website. It's been a while, but yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate you pinpointing both those models. Circle of competence, you kind of nailed it there, is, if we could make sure that we protect our blind spots from what we don't know, and then also keep investing time with the people that we care about, or our circle of what we do know, and where we're going.
Right.
So you did a great job there, kind of showcasing each of those, like whether it's through fatherhood or whether it's through finance, right? Having
Yeah.
that circle of competence, strengthening like your decisions. And then I love also that you brought up the whole experimental thought process as well, because there's another mental model called design thinking, which is a
Mm.
huge one right now by a company called IDEO. And
Mm.
it's just huge right now in terms of, they say when you're experimenting to be creative or innovative, if you look at some of the top innovators in the world, like a typical example is like Elon Musk, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had all this divergent thinking of plenty of solutions or kind of ideas to kind of solve a problem.
Right. Right.
And then he also has combined that with convergent thinking, which is at the end of the day, there's a main mission, a main goal, right?
Right.
So no, I appreciate that, because experimental thinking is definitely part of that aspect of a design thinking process, right? So when we think of, again, across the board, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's education, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
even, something else, design thinking is another way that we could get creative, innovative. And so that brings me to one of my last questions, which is, what are some mental fitness skills or practices or even routines that you have used before, to foster creativity or innovation, or, the entrepreneurship mindset that you have?
Yeah, that's I have to say I've never been asked this question before. You're gonna get me thinking here. I mean, I could tell you my routine. I mean, health and wellness is pretty simple. It's nothing we haven't heard before, but I do meditate. And just the other day, I was telling a group of my mentees, I said, it's easy to say invest in good nutrition, invest in all this stuff, but there's one thing that is not an obvious investment is into breath work. So as of late, I have seen the power of different types of breath work, and it is game changer for me, not only in terms of like physiology, just feeling amazing, feeling connected to my body, all that kind of stuff, but there's different types of breathing techniques that truthfully gives you the same impact as a psychedelic, right? Is and when it's guided by the right leader, or I don't know what people call breath master or breath experts. I should never know what they call themselves. But when they lead the breath work, I find it is a great way to remove I could say the ego, maybe, some thoughts, like just your mind going crazy, that monkey brain, and releasing all judgment, right? And allowing yourself to just run with the most random ideas. And when you're in a space with other people going through the same experience, what comes out of it is, I think, I won't say pure creativity, but definitely ideas come out of it, and then I think I'm not trying to be next level innovative where it's like cutting edge. What I believe is when the right people come together under the right state, the right ideas come out that belong to the right, that are meant for the right group of people to execute and take, to fruition, from idea to implementation, right? That's what I feel. And so the breath work is something like if I were to mention something I don't think a lot of people mention in interviews, is I think breath work and group breath work has been a game changer for me, right? And we did that just this past weekend in a little mastermind I hosted, and I can't wait to do it again, because when we reflected back, most of the people said that was one of the most game changing exercise we did this past weekend. So that's one of them. I could go on, by the way, with other stuff, but I don't want to take up too much of the time here. And we could do a part 2 if you want. I'm good with that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, that brings me to kind of one more question. When you think about, breath work, right, and find that stillness, we're able to slow down our mind, right? And we're also able to, how do I say, like, think best when we're not always racing, right? Like, we're not always thinking of just to get to the next step, or how do I say, like, unpurposeful, like being busy, being busy.
Yeah.
So I totally know, I totally know what you mean. Like, whether that's doing it through physical fitness, right? Going for a hard run and getting those endorphins going is definitely a great way. But the last thing I want to ask you is, I know I've seen you write in the last year, and you're very intentional, very thoughtful, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook. I follow a lot of the stuff that you've written. Are there any, writing prompts or quality questions, that someone could ask themselves, whether it's a learner right now or whether it's an entrepreneur, to think a little bit more, maybe innovative or even creative?
Wow, that's a good one. It makes me wonder what I ask myself every now and then. Uh, That's a good one. Actually, I don't know, other than I always ask myself, if because like I said, I live with this like thing that I know my heart can stop all the time. It's almost like I always think of what can I do today that's the best version of me. And I shouldn't say. I guess best version is not a bad thing. Recently, I said I don't like the whole highest version of yourself concept. It's really every day I wake up and I say it to my kids. We'll wake up. I just always say, "How are you gonna make today great?" That's it. Um, to circle back on meditation, I do 2 types of meditation. The first meditation is in the morning, and that's more of a visualization meditation. And I'm gonna be like straight up, like I said, I'm not like I'm basically a street talker kind of guy, right? So I I ask myself, what's the worst things that can happen today? What's all the shit that's going to happen in my life today? My kid's going to come home, they're going to complain, they're going to fight with each other. Then maybe my sweetie comes home, she's super stressed, and now I feel she doesn't appreciate me. Like all these things. I visualize it all in my head. Today, this is all the things that can happen. All things can go wrong. My client calls me, says I'm a total idiot. Like everything that can happen, I visualize, and then I visualize, and I feel my heart palpitating when I visualize these things. And then I breathe through it, and I visualize myself being calm through the entire process. Right. So my morning meditation, it prepares me for as much shit as I can imagine, but not just defending it, but as an opportunity for me to rise and connect and stay calm and be the leader I want to be. Right. And so then, but my evening meditation is the opposite. It's the opposite of visualization. It's the opposite of setting intention, even, because that requires thoughts. It requires thinking about things. My evening meditation is literally, I hear a thought, I say, "Thank you, mind. I got it from here. I just want to connect with my body. The mind can go to bed for now." Right. And my evening meditation is about just really connecting with my body, letting my mind drop to my heart and my heart drop to my belly and my spirit. Right. And so those are the 2 different meditations I offer. But my morning meditation is how will I make today great? Right. And this morning, I was slightly late coming to this. It's because stuff happened, but I was pretty calm, but stuff did happen. Right. And things I didn't expect to happen. It happened. Right. And I had to figure it out. But because of my meditation, I think the daily practice of this, it really helps me deal with crap that comes, because crap's going to happen no matter what. Like at the end of the day, it's going to happen, but not in a bad way, especially if you prepare for it as an opportunity first thing in the morning. So there you go, bro.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Tuan. And, I want to take this last little moment, to really thank you for being here. I'll be sure, just like last time, to put all your information in the podcast notes.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I want to thank you for creating another memorable conversation. Really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Ben. Much love to everyone. Cheers.